Ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased and very privileged to welcome to the programme Marc Elvis Priestley. Most people will know you from Wheeler Dealers, but you had a bit of a history, as most people also will know, in Formula One. You were with McLaren, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right. It's a huge part of my career. I spent 10 years at the McLaren Formula One team, initially as a race mechanic, and all the way through, even as I got more senior throughout those 10 years, as part of the pit stop crew. So it was a wonderful experience, and has led on really to all the things I do today are at least in some way linked back to my time in Formula One.
Now, you work with some of the most legendary race drivers in Formula One. I mean, Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, David Coulthard, Kimi Raikkonen, Jean Alesi, Montoya, Mika Hakkinen. What was it like working with those guys?
It was amazing. My dream when I got to my late teenage years, my dream was just to work in Formula One. That was the dream. And actually, when that dream came true, there was a huge amount of luck in that my opportunity came with McLaren at a time when McLaren were really at their peak through that era. There was Mika Hakkinen was already the world champion when I got there. David Coulthard was the other driver, and then, as you said, I went through this wonderful list of drivers right through to Lewis Hamilton and Fernando. And what's amazing about those people is they're all different, of course. They all have their own different strengths and weaknesses, but they all have something that's extraordinary. You don't get to become multiple world champions in this sport unless you have something extraordinary. And each of them had something different. And I hope that what I've taken away from that 10-year period is a little bit of something from each of them. I can say that Lewis Hamilton probably worked harder outside of the car than any other driver I ever worked with. He's probably the most complete Formula One driver. It's no surprise to me now. I'm not going to pretend I could ever see his level of success coming, but it's no surprise to me when I look back that he has been that successful because his work ethic and his attention to detail, his drive to find little advantages, in everything he does is phenomenal. So, I was very fortunate to hopefully have a little bit of that rub off on me.
Now, you were at the British Grand Prix, so you must have been over the moon when Lewis came in first this weekend.
Yeah, it was a wonderful event, and I think one of the most impressive things about it seems to have unified Formula One fans, and actually that doesn't happen very often. Formula One fans in recent years have become a little bit more like football fans, where you can only be a fan of one driver, it seems, and you're always right and the other guy's always wrong, and it's become a little bit like that. But actually, this result at the weekend was almost such a great story behind the win that it seemed to unify people, and almost universally, everybody found that a really joyous moment and an inspirational result because of the story that's gone behind it. It's been a long time since Lewis had a win. Obviously, he's done it. He's a Brit and he's done it on British soil, but it's also the very last time he'll get the opportunity to race in front of that British crowd with the Mercedes team that he's had all that success with. So it was a wonderful story, and the way it played out was just, I think Formula One needed it. It was great to be there.
I just want to ask you one more thing about being in Formula One, because it's something that's always fascinated me. When you see the guys that rush out with the air guns and with the wheels, they all seem to be under so much pressure. Is it really that pressured, that environment?
Yes, it is, because, I think Formula One is guilty to some extent of putting so much focus on the drivers. And obviously it's understandable that the stars of the show, and they do, they do incredible things. They are amazing athletes. But the results that you see on a Sunday afternoon, if you watch the race, are not only contributed to by those drivers. There's a huge number of people behind the scenes at every team. And in terms of a pit stop crew, when we burst out of that garage and we have to change the wheels and tyres in what is really high-pressure moments, you're talking about an event that lasts for a couple of seconds that has to be done with, 20 or so people all working perfectly together, and you're going up against another team of people, sometimes more than one, that are doing the same thing at the same time. And you have the ability to completely change the outcome of what is one of the world's biggest sporting events. Hundreds of millions of people watching, a huge amount of passion, behind those results, and every fan wants their driver to win. And whether you perform well or otherwise in those couple of seconds can literally change the outcome and the fortunes of all those people. So, yes, the pressure's real. It's huge. But I guess, I certainly found, and I know that a lot of people up and down the pit lane find this, that they are the sort of people that tend to thrive on that pressure.
Yeah.
You can't not have that ability within you. And the teams, of course, put a huge amount of time and energy into preparing us to be ready to handle that pressure. And those are the kind of things that I think I've hopefully taken away from Formula One that now benefit me all the way through life. In a big pressure moment in the rest of my life, I hope I can rely on some of that training and expertise and experience.
Now, when you left McLaren, you went into broadcasting, and you were the pit lane reporter for BBC Radio 5 Live. That must have been incredible.
Well, it was an amazing opportunity that came about really out of the blue, because I was doing some writing at the time for various magazines, and the producers of that show got in touch and said, look, you have an interesting insight that they weren't really familiar with. Normally they only get the insight of a driver. Most pundits up and down this sport tend to be drivers or ex-drivers. So I had a different perspective coming from the team side of things, and they thought that might translate onto the radio. So they gave me this chance, and I had no idea really what a pit lane reporter's role involved, but I said yes, as I often do, and then figured it out afterwards. And I went along to the British Grand Prix, as it was back then, and had this incredible weekend where immediately after a couple of days of working inside that paddock and in the pit lane, reporting on events, but with my perspective from the team side of things, immediately I knew this was what I wanted my second career, if you like, to be. And I went away from that weekend making it my mission to sort of, make that happen. And I'm very fortunate to say that I've managed to do that.
And then you moved on to Sky F1, as the co-host of the channel studio-based show, Chat Show, the F1 Report.
Yeah.
That must have been... You must have had to go to all the races then.
Yes, there are a lot of... the irony was my decision to leave the team at the end of 2009 was largely based on the fact that we had, with so much travel, it was becoming relentless. And then, yes, the irony, a few years later, I ended up travelling pretty much just as much, but on the broadcasting side. But it wasn't quite, there is a difference in that when you're with a team, you are all in. Yes, you go to every race, but even in between races, particularly by the time I'd left the team, I was in a senior position. You're not going home in between races very much. You're straight into the office to carry on and prepare for the next race. So it's relentless. In the broadcasting sense, it was a little bit more relaxed. We could fly out a little bit later. And when I did come home, I went home. I didn't have to go into the office. So there was a big difference in that. But I'm a huge fan of Formula One. I'm passionate about this sport. I was as passionate as I was right back on day one. I still love it. And now my passion is about sharing some of the insights that I have that I know fans at home aren't lucky enough to have because I haven't been inside a team. And all of these broadcasting roles that I've had in this sport, and even up until today, commentating, I'm actually back with Radio 5 Live doing commentary. That's gone full circle in that sense. But I'm able to share my passion to other people who I know are passionate as other fans of the sport. So it's been an amazing journey that I'm never going to take for granted. I'm very grateful to be able to have the opportunity.
Now, you are now a member of the Wheeler Dealers team. You stepped in when Ansted left in season 17. What was it like, sort of coming into that environment, which was already pretty, fixed in what it was?
Yeah, it had been going for a very long time. Today the show's been running for more than 20 years, nearly 21 years now, continuous. It's the longest running car show in the world. Mm. And so they're big shoes to fill when you step into something that's already so established. The two co-presenters that had gone before me, Ed China and Ant Ansted, both huge sort of fan favourites, both done an amazing job. And you do have to sort of respect that when you get offered an opportunity. It's easy to sort of jump at it and go, well, just obviously the answer is yes, if you want me to come and work on this. But there has to be a little thought for, how's that going to go down? How's it going to be reacted to? And can I do a good enough job that's worthy of this show? And it was only, I had to consider all of that. I obviously came to my own conclusions that I thought I could do it justice, and that I was going to give it my all, and that's what I've done. But the experience has been amazing. Working with Mike has been a real treat. We laugh all day, every single day. We get on. We're now great friends as well as, colleagues. And I mean, who knows where this show will end? Because it's as I say, we're 21 years in. We've just taken the show on a global tour, and we're already planning the next version of that global tour because people can't get enough of it. So, yeah, I love it.
I interviewed Mike a couple of years ago now, and he has got that sort of fun about him, hasn't he, when you're talking to him? I mean, is he... Yeah. I've got to ask this. Is he like that in real life?
Yeah, he's just a barrel of laughs. He is full of fun, but... And both of us bounce off each other. The chemistry between us that you see on television is entirely genuine. There's nothing... I mean, that's what makes our relationship work on screen, is that there's nothing that's faked or, we don't have to put too much effort into the relationship. It just works. We get on like a house on fire because we both have a shared love of cars. And so we do have a lot of fun. But equally, the pair of us, and this is another thing that I think has benefited the show, the pair of us coming together, we're both so driven to make this show better and to keep improving it. And even after 21 years, it would be very easy to sit back and say, well, the format just works, so let's just keep going the way it's going. But we don't do that. Neither of us are willing to just sit back and pat each other on the back. The fact that we've just taken the show on a global tour came from us. It was our drive to go and try and push it further and see what else we could do with it. We don't want this to ever become stale and fizzle out. And to do that, you have to keep reinventing it, and you have to keep coming up with new ideas or new ways of showing the same ideas. And so we're very much involved in how the production works and driving the team forward, pushing everybody very, very hard. But in amongst doing all of that, we have a huge amount of fun too.
I must admit, the series I've just been watching, which is the one where, yes, you've gone all around the world and you picked cars and you sort of not picked the obvious cars from that country and then worked on them, whether it be Australia or wherever you went. What was the one that you thought when Mike came back with the car, or when you decided on which car, you sort of thought, no, please, no?
We do decide on these things, particularly on this world tour, together. But obviously, we're out there. It's a little bit different to the way we've done things in the past, in that we're out in a country, and so the first time we see a car is out in that country. And the one that if you have seen the series, the one that I was a little bit... It took a bit more convincing with me than it did with Mike, was the Sandman.
Yes!
It was sort of down in Australia, which... When we bought it, it genuinely looked like a hearse.
It did.
And the vision for that car, of course, was all about fun and beach life. And, Mike saw that, ahead of me, if you like. Mike saw the vision before I could see it. But I have to say, he was right, and we turned it into something that was fun and fitted in really well in that Aussie beach culture. And the gentleman that brought it from us at the end, I know because he's been in touch since, is very much fitted into that life and is enjoying it. So it's great.
Fantastic. The other thing that I found amazing about that, and I want to know if this is true, the only tools you had were the tools that were there. You weren't able to take, your big toolkit with you.
No, that's right. We tapped into, and this is what was lovely about, and is lovely about travelling around the world. Our show is global, and we took it to the places where people love it most. So where most people watch it, that's where we went on this initial run. And because it's so popular, people were hugely willing to help us, which was lovely. And so we did get people opening up their garages to allow me to come in with these cars and work on them and use their tools. I travelled with a regular suitcase, and all that was in that suitcase were my clothes. We didn't have, container ships full of stuff following us around the world with equipment. It was literally whatever we could beg and borrow and steal on the ground. And but that was part of the adventure. This series particularly, was a bit more than just being workshop based. It was much more about tapping into what the local culture was around these cars and the car community. And I think what you see when you watch the series is that, there's a huge passion for cars everywhere. It's not always the same passion. You see Australia, for example, they have very different needs for their cars in some of these territories where you might have extremes of weather and temperatures. They have, a lot of farm in certain farmland where they need, they might need a ute, an open back pickup, for example, for very different reasons. But the passion is still there with everybody, and that's what we were able to tap into and hopefully show, is that these people were very willing to come out and help us and to buy into the projects we were doing. And we couldn't have done it without these people, but it's also what's, I think, made the show a little bit different to normal. But also, I think the reason it's been so well loved by everybody, and this show is the biggest and best we've ever done in terms of the feedback and the viewer numbers. It's been an enormous success, which is why we're already playing the next one.
Great. Now, I didn't realise you were an author, but there is a brilliant book called The Mechanic, which I've had a little look at. When did you write that? And are you going to do another one?
So I'm halfway through the second book now. But the first book, I think it was published in 2017 or 18, so a few years ago now. But it's become a bestseller. It's published in a number of different languages around the world. It's been huge, way bigger than I ever imagined it could be. And it's essentially my story of how I became a mechanic and my journey through Formula One, and then just touching into my journey into broadcasting after I'd left the team. But it's mostly the story of being a Formula One race mechanic. So all that, what you asked me earlier about what's it like, the pressure inside a pit stop, I go into immense detail trying to describe exactly what that's like. So there's some brilliant stories about some of the F1 drivers. There's a lot of stories in there that you will have never heard before, some that will really surprise people. But it's mostly a lot of fun and a real insight into what it's like behind the scenes as an F1 mechanic. So I've actually toured all over the world with the book, as it's done so well. And they've asked me to do a second book, which, as I say, I'm halfway through right now, which is a little bit different. But yeah, it's a tough process writing a book. It's a hugely long project, and for most of that time, you just cannot see the end. So to say I'm about halfway through is, too far to turn back, and still a long way from the finish.
But great doing it. It's been fabulous talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. The future. I mean, we will get another few series, I guess, of Wheeler Dealers. Yeah. Yeah, that's in the planning now. So you can expect that to be, we hope we'll start filming towards the end of this year, so you'll see it early next year, I'd imagine. Brilliant. Once again, Mark, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. Oh, one question. It's the one question that's been burning in my mind. Is it true that the Elvis comes from one of the kids at school who decided Priestley sounded like Presley?
Yeah, that is true. I think people always wish it was a better reason than that, that I could sing or dance or do impressions, but it's as simple as that, and it stuck. And, it stuck so much so that I think half of my friends and colleagues in the Formula One paddock don't even know that my real name is Mark. Even my own wife only ever calls me Elvis. So it's pretty much now just my mother who refuses to use that name, and will forever just stick with the name Mark.
What a brilliant story. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for chatting with me. It's been an absolute blast, and we wish you well for the future, sir.
Thank you, Lee. Appreciate it. Cheers, mate.
Cheers. Bye for now.